Admiral Jake Morrison walked through the long hallway of Earth's deep space monitoring station with quick steps. The alarm had been ringing for 10 minutes, and his team was already at their stations when he arrived. The main screen showed numbers and waves that meant nothing to most people, but everything to Jake and his crew. They had been watching space for signals from other worlds for 20 years, and today, something was different. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez turned from her computer and looked at Jake with worried eyes. She had been working on the same signal for an hour, and her face showed she had found something important. The signal was coming from far away in space, from a place called the Kepler system, where humans had built a colony 300 years ago. The people there had not talked to Earth for a long time, because the distance was too great for normal communication. Jake stood behind Amy as she played the signal again. The voice was broken and filled with static, but they could hear a woman speaking. She was saying words that made Jake's blood run cold. The woman said her name was Captain Lisa Brooks, and she was the commander of the colony's defense ships. She was asking for help because alien ships were attacking her people and destroying everything they had built. The signal cut in and out, but Jake could hear the fear in Lisa's voice. She said the aliens called themselves the Vex, and they had already destroyed most of the human ships defending the colony. The aliens were killing everyone they found and taking over the planet. Lisa's own ship was damaged, and she knew she would not survive much longer. Her last words were a plea for someone to remember the people of Kepler and to warn Earth that the aliens were coming. Dr. Kevin Wright ran into the room with papers in his hands and sweat on his face. Kevin was Earth's best expert on alien languages, and he had been working on other signals they had caught during the attack. What he found made everyone in the room stop what they were doing and listen. The Vex had been talking to each other during the battle, and Kevin had learned their language, enough to understand what they were saying. The aliens were not just attacking the Kepler colony because they wanted the planet. They were attacking because they hated humans and thought people were too weak and stupid to deserve living in space. The Vex had been moving from planet to planet and destroying every human settlement they found. They called humans a disease that needed to be removed from the galaxy. Jake felt anger rising in his chest as Kevin read more of the alien messages. The Vex thought humans were easy to kill and not worth worrying about. They had been surprised that the people at Kepler had fought back at all. The aliens expected humans to run away or surrender without a fight. They were wrong about that, but they had still won the battle because they had bigger ships and better weapons. The worst news came when Kevin found a message about the Vex's next target. The aliens had learned that all the human colonies came from one world called Earth. They wanted to find this world and destroy it so no more humans could spread through space. The Vex were already moving their ships toward Earth's part of the galaxy, and they would arrive in less than 2 years. Jake immediately called President Helen Carter and told her what they had learned. Within hours, the Global Defense Council was meeting in emergency session. The room was filled with the most important people from every country on Earth. They all knew that humanity was facing its greatest threat, and they had to decide what to do. General Rick Sullivan stood up and spoke first. He was a big man with gray hair who had spent his whole life preparing for war. Rick said that Earth could not let the aliens destroy human colonies without fighting back. He said that even if the colonies were far away, they were still human and deserved protection. Rick believed that Earth had the technology and the will to fight the Vex and win. Other people in the room were not so sure. Dr. Margaret Foster was a scientist who knew about space travel, and she said the distance to the Kepler system was too great for Earth's ships to reach in time to help. She said that even if they could get there, the Vex probably had better weapons and more ships than humanity could build. President Carter listened to everyone speak and then made her decision. She said that Earth would not abandon its children to alien monsters. She said that humanity had survived wars and disasters before and would survive this threat too. The president ordered the military to prepare for war against the Vex, and to gather every ship and weapon that Earth could use. Jake left the meeting knowing that everything had changed. He went back to his station and continued listening to space. But now he was listening for something different. Instead of hoping to hear from human colonies, he was hoping to hear that Earth's ships were on their way to fight. The war for humanity's survival was about to begin, and Jake knew that every person on Earth would have to be ready to fight or die. The signal from Lisa Brooks kept playing in Jake's mind as he worked. She had died trying to warn Earth about the danger coming their way. Now it was up to the people of Earth to make sure her sacrifice meant something. The aliens thought humans were weak, but they were about to learn how wrong they were. When you threaten human children, you face the anger of their parents, and Earth's was about to show the galaxy what that anger could do. The moon looked peaceful from Earth, but under its gray surface, something big was happening. Deep in the tunnels that humans had dug over 200 years ago, machines were working day and night to build ships for war. The Luna shipyards were the biggest secret that Earth had ever kept, and now that secret was about to be revealed to the galaxy. Chief Engineer Amy Martinez walked through the main construction hall, where workers were putting the final pieces on massive warships. Amy had spent her whole life building these ships, and now she was finally going to see them used for their real purpose. The ships were not like the small vessels that Earth used for trade and exploration. These were weapons designed to bring fear to any enemy that threatened humanity. The biggest ship was called the UES Vengeance, and it was over 1 kilometer long. Admiral Jack Thompson stood on its bridge looking out at the other ships in his fleet. Jack was 50 years old, and had been waiting for this moment since he joined the military as a young man. He had trained for Space War when most people thought aliens did not exist. Now he was going to lead humanity's greatest military force into battle. Colonel Ben Parker was in the lower levels of the Vengeance, watching his soldiers prepare for combat. These were not ordinary soldiers, but orbital marines who had been changed by science to be stronger and faster than normal humans. They wore powered armor that could stop alien weapons and carried guns that could punch through the hull of enemy ships. Ben had trained these men and women to be the best fighters in the galaxy, and now they would prove it. Dr. Linda Shaw was working in her laboratory making the final adjustments to humanity's most secret weapon. The quantum torpedoes she had designed could pass through enemy shields, like they were not there, and explode inside alien ships. Linda had been working on this technology for 10 years, and she knew it would surprise the Vex when they faced it in battle. The fleet was bigger than anyone outside the military knew. Besides the Vengeance, there was the UES Retribution commanded by Captain Steve Matthews. Steve was a younger officer who had proven himself in training exercises and was ready for real combat. His ship was loaded with fighters and bombers that could attack enemy vessels from all directions. Captain Monica Taylor commanded the carrier U.S. Wrath, which held hundreds of small fighter ships. Monica had been a pilot herself before becoming a ship commander, and she knew how to use fighters to win battles. Her pilots were some of the best in human space, and they were eager to show the aliens what Earth's military could do. Dr. Ryan Foster had created artificial intelligence systems that made human ships work better than anything the galaxy had ever seen. These AI systems could think faster than any human and coordinate attacks between dozens of ships at the same time. The aliens would find themselves fighting not just human ships, but human ships that worked together like parts of one giant machine. General Rick Sullivan came to the Luna shipyards to speak to the crews before they left for battle. Rick stood in front of thousands of soldiers and sailors who would soon be fighting for humanity's survival. He told them that they were not just defending Earth, but defending the idea that humans had the right to live free in the galaxy. Rick's speech was simple, but powerful. He said that the aliens thought humans were weak because they had never seen what humans could do when they were angry. He said that the Vex had made a mistake when they attacked human colonies, because now they would face the full strength of Earth's military. Rick told the crews that they were going to show the galaxy that when you hurt human children, you face the anger of their parents. The ships began leaving Luna in groups so that Earth's enemies would not see how big the fleet really was. Each ship was loaded with weapons and supplies for a long war in space. The crews knew they might not come home, but they also knew that Earth was counting on them to protect humanity's future. Amy Martinez watched the ships leave and felt proud of what she had built. For 200 years, Earth had been preparing for this moment without knowing when it would come. The Project Warhammer had created ships and weapons that could fight any enemy, and now those weapons were going to be tested in real battle. The UES Vengeance was the last ship to leave Luna, and as it moved away from the moon, Admiral Thompson looked back at Earth one more time. The blue planet looked small and peaceful, but Jack knew it was the home of the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. The aliens had awakened something they did not understand, and now they would face the consequences. The fleet moved through space toward the area where the Vexed ships had been seen. The journey would take weeks, but the crews were ready for whatever they would find. Earth had built these ships to fight a war that most people hoped would never come. Now that war was here, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what humans could do when they were pushed too far. The arsenal that Earth had built in secret was finally awake and moving toward battle. The Vex thought they were fighting primitive humans with weak weapons, but they were about to discover that Earth had been preparing for this war for longer than their empire had existed. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you threatened the children of humanity. The Earth fleet jumped into hyperspace with a sound like thunder that no one could hear. Admiral Jack Thompson sat in his command chair on the UES Vengeance, watching the stars turn into lines of light as his ships traveled faster than light itself. They were following the path that the Vex fleet had taken toward the next human colony at New Geneva, and Jack knew they were racing against time. Every hour that passed meant more human lives would be lost to the alien attack. Jack had studied the reports from the Kepler colony and knew that the Vex did not take prisoners. They killed everyone they found and destroyed everything humans had built. The people at New Geneva had no idea what was coming for them, and Jack's fleet was their only hope. The journey took them through a dangerous part of space called the Vortex Nebula, where the laws of physics worked differently. The nebula was full of gas and dust that made it hard to see and navigate, but it was also the fastest way to reach New Geneva. Jack ordered his ships to stay close together as they moved through the swirling clouds of cosmic debris. It was in the nebula that they found the first survivors from the Kepler colony. Commander Pete Johnson was leading a patrol when his sensors detected small ships drifting in space. The ships were escape pods filled with people who had managed to flee when the Vex attacked their world. Pete immediately ordered rescue operations to begin, and soon hundreds of survivors were being brought aboard the Earth ships. The survivors told horrible stories about what had happened at Kepler. The Vex ships had appeared without warning and began destroying everything with weapons that turned buildings into dust. The aliens had not tried to communicate or negotiate, but had simply started killing everyone they could find. The people who escaped had done so only because some brave pilots had fought the aliens long enough for the escape pods to get away. Among the survivors was Lieutenant Kate Wilson, who had been a colonial marine before the attack. Kate had fought against the Vex ground forces and had learned important things about how the aliens fought. She told Admiral Thompson that the Vex relied on energy shields to protect their ships and used plasma weapons that could melt through human armor. But Kate had also discovered that the alien ships had a weakness. The Vex ships were designed to fight enemies who used energy weapons like themselves. Their shields were very good at stopping plasma and laser attacks, but they were not as good at stopping solid objects moving at high speed. Kate had seen Vex ships damaged by simple kinetic weapons like railguns and mass drivers. This was exactly the kind of weapon that Earth's ships carried in large numbers. Dr. Linda Shaw worked with Kate and the other survivors to modify the fleet's weapon systems. They changed the targeting computers to aim for weak points in Vex ship designs and programmed the AI systems to use tactics that would take advantage of the aliens' weaknesses. Every piece of information from the survivors was used to make Earth's ships more deadly. Captain Steve Matthews used his ship's communication systems to contact resistance cells that were still fighting on worlds the Vex had conquered. The messages that came back painted a picture of an empire that ruled through fear and overwhelming force. The aliens had conquered dozens of different species across the galaxy and had been expanding their territory for thousands of years. The resistance fighters told Matthews about other species that had tried to fight the Vex and failed. The aliens had weapons and technology that seemed impossible to defeat, and they had ships that could destroy entire planets. But the resistance also told him something important. The Vex had never faced an enemy like humans before. Most species surrendered quickly when the Vex attacked, but humans kept fighting even when they were losing. The fleet made a stop at an old mining station called Titan's Edge to refuel and gather more intelligence. The station had been abandoned for years, but it still had useful equipment and supplies. While the ships were being refueled, Dr. Mary Jones made an important discovery in the station's old records. Mary was an archaeologist who studied ancient civilizations, and she found evidence that other species had tried to stop the Vex expansion in the past. The station's computer contained data about battles that had been fought thousands of years ago between the Vex and species that no longer existed. All of these species had been destroyed by the aliens, and their worlds were now empty ruins floating in space. The records showed that the Vex always used the same tactics when they attacked. They would send a large fleet to destroy the enemy's military forces, and then land ground troops to kill any survivors. The aliens believed that fear was their greatest weapon, and they wanted other species to know what happened to those who opposed them. But Mary also found something that gave her hope. The ancient records showed that the Vex had sometimes been forced to retreat when they faced enemies who fought with unexpected tactics. The aliens were powerful, but they were not invincible. They could be beaten by an enemy who was willing to fight harder and smarter than they expected. Admiral Thompson gathered his senior officers to discuss what they had learned. The Vex were powerful and had conquered many worlds, but they had never faced humanity before. Earth's ships were built differently than anything the aliens had seen, and Earth's soldiers fought with a determination that surprised their enemies. Jack knew that the battle at New Geneva would be the first real test of Earth's military power. The Vex would discover that humans were not like the other species they had conquered. Humans did not surrender when they were outnumbered, and they did not stop fighting when things looked hopeless. The aliens were about to learn what happened when they threatened the children of the most stubborn species in the galaxy. The fleet left Titan's Edge and continued toward New Geneva, knowing that they were about to face the greatest test in human history. The survivors from Kepler had given them valuable information, and the resistance fighters had shown them that the Vex could be beaten. Now it was time to prove that Earth's military was strong enough to protect humanity's future among the stars. The Earth fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system, and immediately saw the horror that was unfolding. The Vex fleet was already there, attacking the human colony with weapons that turned the defensive platforms into clouds of glowing debris. The alien ships were massive and dark, moving through space like predators hunting prey. Admiral Jack Thompson stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance and watched the enemy ships destroying everything the colonists had built. The Vex vessels were unlike anything humans had ever seen before. They looked almost alive, with curved hulls that seemed to pulse with dark energy. Their weapons fired beams of plasma that could cut through metal like it was paper. Jack counted 30 Vex ships in the attacking fleet, including several massive vessels that were each bigger than Earth's largest warships. The aliens were methodically destroying every human structure in the system. starting with the orbital defense platforms and working their way toward the colony ships where millions of people were trying to evacuate. The colonists were fighting back with everything they had, but their weapons were not designed for this kind of battle. Their ships were built for mining and transport, not for war against an alien empire. Jack watched as colonial defenders threw themselves at the Vex ships, knowing they would die, but hoping to buy time for the evacuation ships to escape. Jack opened a communication channel to all ships in his fleet and gave the order that would change everything. His voice was calm but filled with deadly purpose as he spoke the words that every crew member had been waiting to hear. He told them that this was what they had trained for, and that today they would show the galaxy what happened when aliens threatened human children. The Earth fleet moved into attack formation, with the UES Vengeance leading the charge. The Vex ships detected the new arrivals and began turning to face this unexpected threat. The aliens had been expecting an easy victory against defenseless colonists, but now they were facing Earth's most powerful warships, loaded with weapons designed specifically to kill. The battle began when the Vengeance fired its main guns at the closest Vex ship. The kinetic rounds traveled at a significant fraction of light speed and hit the alien vessel before its crew could react. The Vex ship's energy shields flared as they tried to stop the solid projectiles, but the shields had been designed to stop energy weapons, not physical objects moving at such incredible speed. The kinetic rounds punched through the alien shields and slammed into the ship's hull with the force of nuclear weapons. The Vex vessel shuddered under the impact and began venting atmosphere through massive holes in its armor. The aliens inside were learning their first lesson about human weapons the hard way. Captain Monica Taylor launched her fighters from the UES Wrath, and the small ships swarmed toward the Vex fleet like angry insects. The alien point defense systems tried to shoot down the fighters, but there were too many of them coming from too many directions. The human pilots flew their ships with skill and determination, diving through enemy fire to attack the weak points that Lieutenant Kate Wilson had identified. Colonel Ben Parker's orbital Marines were loaded into assault shuttles and launched toward the Vex ships. The Marines wore powered armor that could survive in space and carried weapons that could cut through alien hull material. Their job was to board enemy vessels and fight the aliens inside their own ships where the Vex could not use their biggest weapons. The Vex responded to the human attack with surprise and then anger. The alien fleet had been expecting to face primitive weapons and weak defenses, but instead, they were fighting an enemy that seemed to know exactly how to hurt them. The Vex ships began concentrating their fire on the Earth vessels, hoping to destroy them quickly. Captain Steve Matthews brought the UES Retribution alongside a Vex cruiser and opened fire with every weapon his ship carried. The alien vessel tried to maneuver away, but human ships were faster and more agile than the Vex had expected. Steve's gunners poured fire into the enemy ship until its hull began to crack and split apart. The turning point of the battle came when Dr. Linda Shaw's quantum torpedoes were used for the first time in combat. The torpedoes passed through the Vex flagship's shields as if they were not there and detonated inside the ship's core. The massive alien vessel split in half as explosions tore through its interior, and its death throes could be seen across the entire star system. The destruction of their flagship shocked the Vex fleet, and for the first time in the battle, they began to show fear. The aliens had been fighting for thousands of years, and had conquered dozens of species, but they had never faced an enemy like this. The humans fought with a combination of advanced technology and savage determination that was completely new to them. The battle continued for hours as human ships hunted down the surviving Vex vessels. The aliens tried to retreat, but Earth's ships were faster, and the human crews were not interested in letting any of the attackers escape. Every Vex ship that had participated in the attack on the colony was destroyed or captured, but the victory came with a price that reminded everyone what war really cost. Several human ships had been lost in the fighting, including Captain Matthews and the UES Retribution. Steve had died when his ship was destroyed by concentrated Vex fire. But his final message to the fleet would be remembered forever. He told them to remember that they had held the line against the alien threat. The colonists at New Geneva celebrated their rescue, but they also mourned the human lives that had been lost protecting them. The battle had shown that Earth's military was powerful enough to defeat the Vex, but it had also shown that the aliens were dangerous enemies who would not give up easily. Admiral Thompson looked at the wreckage floating in space around New Geneva and knew that this was just the beginning. The Vex Empire was vast, and they would not ignore the destruction of one of their fleets. The aliens would send more ships, and Earth would have to be ready for a much bigger war. The message that would spread across the galaxy was clear. Humanity had announced its presence to the stars, not with words of peace, but with the thunder of its guns. The species that had been hiding in the darkness of space, waiting for someone to stand up to the Vex, had finally found their champion. Earth had come to the galaxy, and it had come ready for war. The news of humanity's victory at New Geneva spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had expected. Species that had been hiding in fear from the Vex for hundreds of years suddenly began sending messages to Earth asking for help and offering to join the fight against their common enemy. The battle had done more than save one human colony. It had given hope to every species in the galaxy that had been waiting for someone strong enough to stand up to the Vex Empire. Admiral Jack Thompson found himself commanding not just human ships but vessels from dozens of different worlds. The Altarian Collective sent their crystal ships that could bend light around them to become invisible. The Sirius Federation contributed their gravity weapons that could crush enemy vessels from the inside. Even small species that had been enslaved by the Vex for generations began sending whatever ships they could spare to join the growing resistance. The alien allies were amazed by human military technology and tactics. Most species in the galaxy had developed weapons designed to disable enemy ships and capture them intact. The humans had built weapons designed to completely destroy anything they were pointed at. The aliens had never seen such focused destructive power, and they began to understand why the Vex had been so surprised by the human attack. General Rick Sullivan established forward bases throughout human space to coordinate the growing alliance. The bases were built on asteroids and small moons, where they could be hidden from Vex scouts. Each base had communication equipment that could reach every part of the galaxy and weapons that could defend against alien attack. Rick was turning human space into a fortress that could support military operations across the galaxy. Dr. Ryan Foster worked with alien scientists to improve the AI systems that controlled human ships. The artificial intelligences learned to communicate with alien technology and coordinate attacks between ships that had been built by completely different species. The result was a fleet that could fight with the precision of a single organism while using the strengths of many different technologies. The Vex Empire responded to the threat with confusion and then anger. For thousands of years they had been the strongest force in the galaxy, and no one had dared to challenge them directly. Now they were facing an enemy that not only fought back, but seemed to be getting stronger with each battle. The Vex leadership, known as the Hierarchy, decided that humanity had to be destroyed completely before other species got ideas about rebellion. The alien empire began gathering ships from across their territory to create the largest fleet they had ever assembled. The Vex were calling back vessels from distant conquests and building new ships as fast as their factories could produce them. The Hierarchy had decided that they would crush the human resistance so completely that no other species would ever dare to oppose them again. Earth's intelligence services, led by Dr. Kevin Wright, intercepted Vex communications that revealed the size of the approaching threat. The alien fleet heading toward Earth was larger than anything humans had ever imagined. It contained thousands of ships, including massive vessels that were each the size of small cities. The Vex were bringing enough firepower to destroy entire star systems. President Helen Carter called another emergency session of the Global Defense Council, but this time the meeting included representatives from every species that had joined the alliance. The room was filled with beings from across the galaxy who had come to Earth to plan the defense of their new home. They all knew that if Earth fell, the resistance would collapse and the Vex would be free to continue their expansion. The preparation for the final battle turned Earth's solar system into the most heavily defended place in the galaxy. Human shipyards worked around the clock to build new vessels, while alien factories contributed their own designs to the growing fleet. The moon was turned into a giant weapon platform, and Mars became a supply depot for the Allied forces. Admiral Jake Morrison was given command of Earth's home defense fleet, which now included ships from dozens of different species. Jake had started this war by detecting the first alien signal, and now he would help finish it by defending humanity's home world. The fleet he commanded was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. With human aggression combined with alien technology, the Allied fleet took positions throughout the solar system with instructions to make the Vex pay for every mile of space they advanced. The defense plan was simple but effective. The aliens would face layer after layer of resistance as they moved toward Earth, and each layer would be designed to destroy as many Vex ships as possible before falling back to the next defensive line. The waiting was the hardest part for everyone involved. The soldiers and sailors knew that the biggest battle in galactic history was coming, but they did not know exactly when. Earth's long-range sensors could detect the approaching Vex fleet, but the aliens were still weeks away from arriving. The time was used to make final preparations and to say goodbye to loved ones. When the Vex fleet finally appeared at the edge of the solar system, it was even larger than Earth's intelligence had predicted. The alien ships filled space like a dark cloud moving toward the sun. Their weapons were charged and ready to destroy everything in their path. The hierarchy had sent everything they had to crush the human resistance once and for all. But the aliens were not facing Earth alone. Ships from across the galaxy had come to join the defense of humanity's homeworld. The species that had been conquered by the Vex had finally found someone willing to lead them in rebellion, and they were not going to let that chance slip away. The final battle would determine whether the galaxy would be free or remain under alien tyranny. President Carter broadcast a message to the galaxy as the battle was about to begin. She spoke about how the war had started with a desperate call for help from a human colony under attack. She said that Earth had responded to that call with everything they had, and now the galaxy was responding to Earth's call for help. The president reminded everyone that they were not just fighting for their own worlds, but for the right of all species to live free from fear. The message ended with words that would be remembered long after the war was over. Carter said that when good people decided they had enough of bullies, the bullies always lost in the end. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when every free species worked together to fight tyranny. The war for galactic freedom had begun, and Earth stood at its center, ready to defend liberty, with everything humanity had learned about making war.